So IronSight was designed from the beginning with collaboration in mind. As early as 2017, energy producers could request work on our mobile app, and drivers at other companies were able to perform that work. We showed real time where people were in the field and provided tools for communication. But there were limitations. So recently we took a big step in how collaboration works on IronSight, and we took the real-time communication features that you love and made them more powerful. So let me show you what's new. There's three things I'll be covering today. Some big things in what we're offering in our marketplace. The first is that service providers can now seamlessly work for multiple customers. And the second is that energy producers can now isolate their operations geographically or by function. And lastly, energy producers in Midstream can now collaborate by sharing locations. So let's start with multi-company collaboration. Until recently, IronSight limited service providers to only work for one customer. And this has become a major issue for service providers who are running their businesses on IronSight. We were able to accommodate these workflows, but there were limitations. So now we offer first-class support for multi-company collaboration. To show how it works today, let's first just take a look back at how it used to work. Oil producers used to manage service providers in the oil producer's environment. So the oil producer defines all the configuration for their two service providers. This includes managing users and resources. Because this trucking company is managed by the oil producer, they're unable to accept work from the second oil company over here. To work around this limitation, service providers would manage multiple instances, keeping 2 copies of each user and resource in sync. And as you can imagine, it's difficult to keep track of work, stay organized in these 2 environments. So we've changed the model to match how your businesses actually work. Because service providers are no longer managed in an energy producer's environment, they have complete control over their users and resources. The big news is that service providers can accept and perform work for all of their customers. Let's dive into IronSight, see our product about how this works. Let's start with what an oil producer sees. Here, I have schedule view, which allows the energy producer to see all of their work in a calendar view. This oil producer works with 2 trucking companies to move fluid in the Permian. On the left side of schedule view, you can see your partners and their trucks. Across the top, each column is a day in my week, and this grid gives me a full picture of my week of work. Everything that's completed, ongoing, planned across all of my partners and their resources. So I'm planning work for today. And if we look at the first row in this table, it's my queue, the jobs that I need to perform. So for my first job in the morning, I want to haul produced water from a facility to a disposal. Since it's early in the day, my partner's trucks are at their yard, so I'm going to defer to their coordinators to make the dispatching decision. By dragging the job onto their company, I'm sending it into that service provider's queue. Their coordinator is going to get notified of the new job via email and make a real-time decision based on the availability of the resources. Now watch schedule here. In this case, the coordinator of a trucking company is going to assign to unit number 87. Once they make that dispatching decision, my view is automatically updated. I can see that job as soon as it moves. So keep watching in that same area. As the job is being performed, I follow along from schedule view as the driver moves from the pickup location to the destination, and I can eventually see that the job is completed. I can also follow the truck's movements from field view. Field view is a great view for getting real-time insight into what's happening in the field geographically. As a dispatcher, it's valuable knowing where my trucks are or the trucks I have available in the field so that I can optimize assignment. In this case, I have unit number 87 nearing the pickup location for the next job I need to schedule. So later in the afternoon, when I need to move my next load, I can assign directly to that truck, bypassing the trucking company's coordinators. So far, I've showed how schedule view and field view are powerful ways to control and monitor what's happening in the field. But I haven't really covered anything new. It's the same collaboration model that we've had for years. To see what's new, let's switch to the service provider perspective and see how things have changed. So I've pulled up a service provider schedule view, which looks very similar to what I showed for energy producers. These service providers all have access to the same view, but IronSight is secure. So these service providers see only their own resources and work that's been assigned to them. While this trucking company started out working for the oil producer I showed earlier, they want to use IronSight to manage all of their logistics, which will allow them to transition to fully digital field tickets and simplify their invoicing process. Their other customer, though, is not in IronSight. I'm going to show how this trucking company can manage work done for this other company, even when they're not in the system. When a trucking company gets a call on the phone to skim oil off a pond, they create the job on behalf of that company. The first step when creating a job is to select which customer it's for. Once they've made that selection, the fields are contextualized to that company. This makes data entry a breeze and avoids mistakes. Once I've filled out all the fields, the last step as a service provider is to make an assignment dispatching decision to the desired truck. In this case, I'll assign to unit number 87. Once the work has been created, from the driver's perspective, on the right-hand side here, there's no difference between work done between any of their customers. As you can see here, I have a job from our first oil company and a second company in schedule view. I have the same two jobs that are assigned to the same unit in the mobile app. The mobile app has one unified schedule that interleaves work between the two companies. So when the driver opens the job, they see all the information for that job, including the pickup and destination on the map. Once they've arrived at the pond to pick up, they start the job, notifying everybody involved. Note how schedule view reflects the driver's activity real time. If there are any questions while completing the work, the oil company and field workers can chat using job comments. Once the trucker arrives at the destination, they collect any required information and complete the job. Note how on schedule view, that information is immediately reflected to both the service provider and the energy producers coordinators. Sometime later, the trucking company's second customer is interested in optimizing their field operations and joins IronSight as well. So now we have two energy producers in IronSight managing their work and the service provider. The trucking company will no longer need to create all the work on behalf of that other company. Instead, jobs will come directly to trucks or be dispatched through my service provider queue. So keep an eye here for how work arrives into the queue of a service provider. That's it. So service providers also receive an email to ensure that they don't miss any requests. That's our new collaboration model. Service providers can now work for multiple customers, whether that company is in IronSight today or not. The second new capability I want to cover today is that was enabled with our recent changes to Marketplace is the ability for energy producers to isolate their operations functionally and geographically. IronSight's customers use this functionality to run distinct operations across the Canadian prairies all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. Your operations do not match your hubs. Things are all jumbled up on the job panel. When you request new work, you'll see maintenance people alongside your logistics folks. You'll see thousands of wells along your administration buildings and facilities, and this is not always desirable. By adding hubs, you take all the people, locations, forms, and work activities that you have jumbled up and isolate them. For example, this oil producer has operations in both the Permian and the Bakken. A trucking company only works in the Permian, but a second service provider works at both. Now, when creating a job, after creating hubs, the requester will first choose which hub that job is for. After selecting the Permian, only relevant information to that operation is visible. Now, the last new capability I want to highlight today is that there are new ways for you to collaborate with other energy producers. I'll highlight 2 ways we've seen that happen in recent years. So far, the examples I've shown are where an energy producer and a service provider are connected. But energy producers and midstream companies can connect in much the same way. So in this example, we have Center Midstream, who has deployed IronSight to reduce waiting times at their risers. IronSight tracks the jobs from the oil producer hauls to the terminal, and both parties want real-time production accounting data from that load. When the job is completed and approved, an IronSight integration sends that data to the external systems without any interaction. In another example, we have 2 energy producers who operate in the Permian and are struggling to keep pace with their huge surplus of produced water. At the same time, nearby drilling demands water and access to storage ponds. Water and pond reuse is of huge mutual benefit. Using FieldView, connected producers create and share available water and pond locations. The water teams at each company review FieldView every week to find what they need for drilling. Today, we've covered a number of exciting new possibilities offered by our recent improvements to collaboration, but we're not stopping here. We've got more improvements coming. The first is a new administration experience that makes it much easier to configure your organization and hubs. There will be usability improvements across the board, but service providers will notice the biggest difference because they'll be able to manage hubs on behalf of customers who are not yet in the platform, something that's brand new. The next improvement that we're planning is the ability for service providers to organize their users and resources into teams. This will be useful for any trucking company, but especially for those that want to maintain isolation between different teams. For example, if they were to work in different regions. Now, lastly, I touched on Midstream a bit earlier by discussing how we can integrate job data into external systems, but we want to offer first-class Midstream support on Schedule View and Field View within IronSight. With those tools, Midstream companies can reduce their wait times at terminals. That's it for today. Thanks for joining us, and please feel free to connect with us about how to deploy what I've shown today in your business.